Hello and welcome. Today, I have something a little bit different. We have two very special guests who are esteemed players in the community of Age of Empires, Harrison and Lionheart. Gentlemen, thank you for coming today. And we're going to be talking about our opinions on how to balance civs. So, just for reference, Lionheart's around 1900 elo, Harrison is around 16, 1700 elo, and I'm at
Oh,
1300.
you recovered yourself then. You recovered yourself then.
Yeah.
He gave us both the upper echelon of our
Upper echelon,
egos.
yes. So this video I think will be a bit different. Instead of just having, somebody from a shitter elo like myself or, like the pros, we'll have different perspectives on what we think each range of skill will be unbalanced or balanced. And if we all agree on something, then that means that something is truly fucked. Um, so I'll just get started real quick. Some general things. I think that auto-producing units and like villagers, it's really lowering the APM and it's kind of allowed a turtle meta, if you will, from what I've seen. A lot of just fast industrial and then just powerful shipments, and I think that's something that's kind of goes against the concept of RTS having decent actions per minute, map control, resource control, things of that nature. So, what do you guys think about that?
I would say it's not that not having map control is unpunishable. Is that some civs don't need the map. They don't. The map they play on doesn't affect their playstyle, and that if they stay in the base, it's as good as going out in the base and doing other strategies and situations.
Sure, sure. What say
Yeah.
you, Lion?
I mean, it's no secret I'm an FI enjoyer and a DLC enjoyer. I do agree, though, that I think maybe the meta for that kind of in-base style has gone a little bit too far, and there should definitely be more rewarding coming out of your town and seeking the map and taking map control. That should definitely be more rewarded than it currently is. But yeah, it's not easy. But on the other hand, you need to have a diverse cast of civilizations that do different things. Otherwise, the game would get stale and boring. So
No, I totally agree. And I think a lot of the things that I'm going to try and talk about in terms of, civs that are unbalanced is not tearing apart their identity, but bringing them more in line, if that makes sense.
Mm.
So the first civ I want to talk about, we're going to talk about the natives, the Europeans, or yeah, just in that order. So for the Aztecs, I do think that the animation for the Atonan Slingers is kind of poor. They do have a 1.5 times rate of fire, but it fires at the end of the animation, which I think kind of hurts the unit overall. They do have a decent gold economy, but I think adding steel traps or some native tech equivalent would really help because it feels a lot of times that the natives in particular lack economy but have decent units. Um, and the Eagle Runner Knight, which was the premier S tier dragoon for their civilization, I think got hammered pretty hard with the infantry multiplier. So I think reducing that to zero point 0.8 might be decent. And then reducing the effectiveness of warrior priests by 5% at the community plaza, I think would also bring their XP curve a bit more in line in the early game. Harrison, what are some things you think about the Aztecs?
So I think it's interesting thing about the fire animation there, the on Thompson Slingers. Over DE, there's been concerted efforts to try and redo some of the firing animations because if you looked at how House's Fulani archers have been designed and how they've been delivered, they are very fast, sets up very fast firing, very responsive units, and make some of the older units looking really bad. For example, Seaton bows, I think, have been adjusted. Quite a lot of these older archers have target lock as well, so once they've set up their archers, their arrows go off and hit their target. So I think we've gone around where it's getting to the point where each and every single animation is going to get improved, and that's increasing the unit's viability without actually changing the stats, which I guess it worked, but it does lead to potential balance questions because the game was kind of feeling balanced in terms of unit stats and how they respond, unit responsiveness. But once one gets changed, then you set up another, then you set up another, and then there will be a day when somebody says, "Oh, I think the British longbows are terrible. We need to buff their fire animation." And everybody will just have their hands in their head, not knowing whether this is going to be a good change or a bad change. So, animation changes are certainly an interesting idea.
Sure.
My thoughts, look, Aztec. I'm going to say straight off the bat, Aztec are a good Civ. They're a very strong Civ.
Yes, I agree.
The likes of
I agree.
I am Daniel absolutely destroying people with Aztec and playing Aztec very standard, if you will. So very Age 2 orientated. And he's a top 10 player, and he's been destroying people. And to be honest with you, I think a Tauntaun Slingers are pretty good. They're what? They're the Strelets, aren't they? They're the native Strelets, and I think they're actually pretty good. You can mass a lot of them. Aztec can mass lots of different types of units. From one barracks. So I think Aztec are in a really good position. I don't think they're OP. But I think they're a very strong Civ overall, and that's what I look at when I talk about balance. You could have one or two specific things that might be too good or not good enough, but overall, as a civilization, overall, I think Aztec are in a really good spot. So I wouldn't change too much about them, to be honest.
That's fair. That's fair.
The scaling of the hero revive dance is actually probably too good. But then if you only have like one warrior priest dancing for the hero revive, it does take a long time to actually get that benefit. So that's one of those scaling issues there. I would say that the whole identity of Aztec is the warrior priest, is the fire pit. So it is pretty good that it is strong and it is like a core aspect of their gameplay. And I kind of would say that part of the Aztec kind of playbook is to change the dance up when needed, and especially make good use of warrior attack dance. There's so many times I'm watching these native games, where it's with the Haudenosaunee, where it's with the Lakota, and nobody's using the Community Plaza for the up to plus 25% attack boost on final stats in combat, and that's what a lot of people forget. And I think that the Eagle Runner Knight's nerf to all infantry was a bit of an over nerf, but still kind of gets compensated by this war dance, but kind of then leads to other units performing well in their place. But I could see the effects. 5% from Warrior Priest changing the Community Plaza will have no effects, though. So it's kind of one of those changes that it's a change for change's sake. I wouldn't actually recommend it. It won't change anything, and probably, to be honest, probably won't need steel traps. Their Aztecs are probably fine in design.
That would be too. I feel like that would be pretty OP. I'm not gonna lie. Like on this particular civilization, I would disagree with all of those bullet points.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
I just feel like Eagle Runner Knights are still good.
They are.
Steel traps would be way too OP. Warrior Priests are really good, and a Tauntaun Slingers are pretty good as well. So I wouldn't change anything about Aztecs, to be honest.
Those are all fair points. And I think that the one thing that I would agree with is, since the Aztecs in particular don't need to rely on villagers going onto the Community Plaza for the war dance, they're able to remass more effectively, since part of their economy isn't spent with villager seconds on the plaza. But yeah, no, that I think Aztecs are generally good, but as you mentioned, Lionheart, not OP. So moving on. Haudenosaunee. Now they are, I think, very strong. I think the hyena buff is kind of busted right now, and it's really hard to micro against it because you're supposed to kite them to not get so they don't achieve the fire rate buff, but they also have more range. They're food cheap, and just with the strong rush in H2, it can be kind of hard. The Kanya Horsemen, I feel they are strong. Like the 4 Kanya shipment is good, but having it cost wood, I feel like kind of sucks. Now, granted, the natives have strong wood tax at the markets, but I think maybe some cost adjustment to that, and same with the Musket Riders might be a good play since they don't have amalgamation and steel traps. But I think they're a strong Civ. My biggest concern really is the second point with the hyena fire rate. What do you guys think?
I've joked about it many times, Cast. In the end, fire rate buff was an ill thought out change because It's not changing the base attack or base stats. It's actually affecting the end products. So if you have a fully upgraded unit and then it fires faster, then that kind of the effect cross multiplies. So the stat is a bit crazy, but it's also it kind of punishes good play from your opponent. It punishes your opponent sending explorer to snare and getting amongst the archers and tank up the fire. It punishes sending cav in onto the units to basically cut them down or snare or whatever. Because I don't know off the top of my head, but I believe if an enemy is nearby an Aena, that Aena does not have to be targeting that unit to get that buff. So let's say you had some perfect micro, you could really abuse the fact that my opponent's trying to snare me with some good play. I'm just going to turn that right against him, and they already move at 5 speed, so they can just chase up and close in on 4 speed skirmishers and become monsters.
Yeah, and I know what you just mentioned. Sometimes when I tested this out, I would split fire, but not shoot the melee thing, the opponent meleeing me. I would just shoot the one to the left of it, and the other ones would shoot the right. And you basically, as you mentioned, the snare becomes like they don't even go into melee, so it's pretty strong.
Yeah. I mean, I would disagree with steel traps again. I mean, if you give steel traps to any of the natives, honestly, it's just going to make them way too good.
Okay.
Obviously, historically,
I
they
think
haven't had.
what a potential happy ground would be another 10% food tax. So for 90 wood, 90 gold, 10% in H2. So it's not the same efficiency as a 20% for 125 woods, 125 gold, but it's kind of gives a little bit of a nudge. You got to remember the natives; they do have hunting bonus techs in the mill. It's really awkward to get, but the Haudenosaunee can get that with their travois. So actually, they can hunt faster than any other European civs, but the way to get that is a bit convoluted. And I think if the civ was designed now, I don't think they would have wanted hunting techs in the farms and the mills because it's just not great in general, especially with Haudenosaunee going for a bit of water eco on the side. It's just don't really often get early farms for that tech.
Yeah, and the reason I've put these techs in the marketplace is because when thinking about other European civs or the Asian civs at the marketplace, right? They have cards like refrigeration, spice trade, royal mints to further boost their natural gathering rates. And I feel that sometimes when I'm playing the natives, I feel like my economy is lacking in comparison. Now,
That is
this,
kind of the point, though. That
yeah,
is by
yeah,
design, and
yeah,
and also sometimes refrigeration royal mint, they look good on paper, but they don't actually perform the level which you want them to because it is only affecting, let's say, 25% of that of the villas gathering that resource. It's not
that's true.
25% eco card. It is in effect really low impact, really long lasting before you actually get anything back from those cards. I've got to say one more other thing. Presentation. Super quality, except for the flags. Like you spent you spent 1,000 hours on everything else except for you thought I'll just go for the worst flag possible, and bam! Like I didn't even know if that's how.
Quite literally, just before this, I was like, I should probably add the flags in, and just went on and just took these super small JPEGs. But noted,
Yeah,
duly noted.
you know the button open image in new tab. That's top
Yes,
tip there for you.
yes. You're not wrong. You're not wrong. But yeah.
The AN thing as well. Yeah, I mean, I agree with what you said. I mean, I'm not opposed to them having a small buff to the closer you get in range, but we're talking 10-15%, not what crazy it is. And actually, you could just leave AN at the fact that they also got their target lock. So they also got the target lock effect. So you could just leave that in it, and that is a really good buff. So as soon as they start the animation, they fire regardless of how far away the unit goes. So yeah, they're too good at the moment. 100%.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Now, I'm gonna bitch and moan about this next one. All right, I am a Lakota enjoyer, and there's some things that I think really hurt them. So, um, I think I've taken your points on the market techs. So I think we can agree that that amalgamation would not be necessary to add in. Now, my biggest gripe with Lakota is their anti-artillery, right? So the Rifle Rider, great unit, no doubt, fantastic unit. Counters heavy infantry, counters heavy cavalry, but sometimes with the because I normally don't include new ways in my deck at the TPs to get Cavalry Caracol, but when they only have 12 range, right, and say you're fighting mass, you know, goon and heavy cannons, by the time they get into range of the cannon, they're already, one, being shot by the cannons, and two, being shot by dragoons, which also hard counter them since they're classified as heavy cav and light cav.
But yeah, you just identified the point though, that the Rifle Rider is not comparable to the Bow Rider of Lakota itself. Right. They are very two different units, and it's very important that Rifle Rider does have the heavy cavalry tag. And I know some people actually don't even realize that unit has that tag, and they're thinking, oh, I should be able to trade well with dragoons, but that, by design, that is just not the case.
Right.
And I think the Bow Riders fulfill that role quite fine, and they would trade absolutely lovely versus heavy cannons and dragoons. It's interesting about the New Ways card though, because back in RE early DE ESOC patch, I would say that Lakota is the only Civ where I go into a game thinking, I wish I've got 15 cards in Age 2, but I've only got space for 10. Because you've got the Vilsa, you've got crates, you've got units, you've got cav upgrades, you've got hunting upgrades, you've got your TP upgrades, you've got potential and outlaw cards to send in there, you've got your advanced arsenal card. There's so many Age 2 cards. There are 15 Bisons as well, sometimes very useful. So much utility in that second age, but you can't quite have every situation ready for you in that deck for Lakota. And quite often you're not going to have double cav upgrades in Age 2 and the advanced arsenal. But having said that, I think they removed one of those cav Age 2 upgrades.
They did, and they also removed the 4 Vil card, so they only get 3 Vil and then 8 Vil on Age 3.
I tell you what, though, that the whole healer economy for the Lakota and Howd feels exceptionally weird. It's one of those. Mm-hmm. I look at that and it just doesn't make me want to play the Civ. Is one of the problems. Yeah. I used to enjoy playing Sue when it was late RE, early DE, but then it's really gone in a very weird direction.
Yeah, and I do want to be careful with Lakota though, because if you recall, several patches ago, they became one of the strongest Civs with some wood crates added to their start.
Yeah, but that's just the devs smoking. Like, honestly,
right. Yeah,
that is an outrage. That was, and it was the reason why that happened was I think I was playing versus Fitzbro in one of the public preview patches, and I think I went like 10-1 versus him. And he went to a Discord somewhere and it's like, I've just lost 10-1 versus Lakota. Therefore, by science, it means Lakota's weak. And they go, all right, we'll just put some wood crates in, and then instantly, bam, I'm playing Dutch. I'm trying to build towers in transition to Age 2. I've got like 3 layers of wall on my base. I can't leave. Back in the days when Lakota could fast age and send Axe Riders like 3 minutes or something like that. It was just oppressive. It was insane. I was like, oh my god, Fitzbro, you're amazing. Oh wait, no, you're playing this Civ. Oh, that's what it was. And it did become like super, super scary Civ, and it is, the main reason why Civs like Germany do not have 200 wood crates to start, and how Civs are balanced with their wood crate starts is just such a finicky, important time.
Yes.
Just imagine if Brits had 200 wood crates instead of 300. There would be anarchy. There would be even more anarchy than the Freeville change.
Mm-hmm. Something that I do want to note, though, so I do think in some situations, the Seton bow is strong. It has 5 speed at start, and the Explorer buffs its speed, but the firing animation I think is awkward. Now we've kind of touched on this with some of the others. It
was improved, and you've got to remember Seton bow are the strongest anti-heavy infantry archer in the game. A full-on 2 multiplier versus heavy infantry, and a pretty high base attack as well. I think it starts at 15, so they do 30 attack versus musketeers at probably a 1.5 rate of fire. So it's one of those units that it's not trying to be the skirmisher. They have the Makina rifle for that. It is a different unit in that sense. And now that we've got Age 2 Warhut play, and basically Lakota is the infantry Civ, they don't do cavalry anymore, which is, I think, the biggest problem with Lakota is that the identity just is gone, completely removed. Mm-hmm. They actually are performing very, very well, even with no upgrade cards.
Yes. Now, the biggest problem, though, as I kind of prefaced at the beginning, is with a lot of tower, fort play, removing the Tushunki Prowler to the 4th age and having to go into clubmen for your siege or sending villagers to do the siege dance makes it kind of difficult to push, if that makes sense. And I've just found it awkward at times because sometimes I'll go into 3TC adoption, fertility dance boom, but it just doesn't feel as rewarding as I would have hoped. And then lastly, the Explorer tech for the anti-artillery, it currently costs 300 wood and 1,000 coin. And when you're in the 3rd age and you're trying to mass bow riders, rifle riders, and your coin economy isn't fantastic per se, I feel like that is expensive to macro for, just for your explorer to kind of run in and get shot by dragoons and get maybe one hit in on an artillery piece.
But I think
higher the age you go, though, like if you're on age 4, age 5, and you use that, it's actually insane.
I think you're missing the point because the idea is you move in with Explorer HP dance on, and then you just 2-tap heavy cannons, and your opponent's offensive threat has essentially been neutralized for a free unit, which can get revived straight away. And now, okay, 1,000 gold, quite expensive. I want to say it was around about 300 wood, 700 gold. Previously, it was 600 around that area. So, I wouldn't complain if it was moved into that. But it's
300 wood.
It's a late
would be way too cheap.
It's a late game tech for a late game reason. It's not I'm getting rushed by Spain 2 falconets and 12 pikes. I need to get this teching because that's not what it's designed for.
Right. I'm more so talking about. Well, I guess at that point in the 4th age, you can definitely afford it. I've just had troubles personally, and this might be a misunderstanding of the tech itself, because I thought the attack dance is what you would switch to, not the explorer dance when fighting artillery. So that's actually
depends on the situation. Depends on the situation. And look, if you're in age 3, you shouldn't be using that tech. It's way too expensive for age 3. What you should be doing is using some of your assets, your best assets as Lakota, to defeat artillery, which is actually just cav. Heavy cav.
Right.
And the thing with Lakota is it's quite you need to have good micro if you want to do really well with Lakota. You've got to know how to flank, you've got to know how to utilize all of their big buttons and all that sort of stuff. So I can understand, at lower elos you struggle with artillery, but it is a kind of a case of you have to improve your micro with the cavalry to understand how to flank artillery properly.
Right. And I'm not going to disagree with that. Any other? I know Harrison and I discussed a lot about Lakota. Do you have any other points, Lionheart?
The Tushunki one is of interest because I don't know if I would be in favor. That might be the one that I'd be in favor for, because I'm no Lakota player, but I really liked the Tushunki Prowler. I thought it was a really cool design unit. The biggest problem obviously was people were just stealthing like 20 of them and then just absolutely shit on everyone, like when they came within like one range distance and there's absolutely nothing they could do and the game was over. That was the biggest problem with them. But I think stealth as a whole has been nerfed now, so I think moving the Tushunki Prowler back to age 3 might be okay, because you can get within a certain range of like 5 or 6 and they'll be stealth now. So Tushunkis as a whole have been nerfed just because of that fact, so it would probably be okay to bring them back to age 3.
It's what I would say with that is that I think the original design of Tushunki Prowler was convoluted and poorly thought out, because it's essentially trying to be another heavy cavalry, which Lakota have plenty of in its own right. And as soon as we make the argument that Tushunki Prowlers are stronger than Axe Riders, and then you had them access to them at age 3, then nobody makes Axe Riders anymore. They will go to Tushunki Prowlers, and you just make the better unit until you have to then go back to Axe Riders for the build limits. And obviously, I assume they still auto tech to guard in the 4th age, so that's your kind of little pivot into strong unit if you can't afford any wood at that point. So they have their different roles, but there was a time when it was nobody made any Axe Riders at any point because there was no need to make them anymore, because you had strong Tushunkis, and you can complement that with other units. You didn't have to worry about the other thing. One thing I would say, actually, one point you have missed on your little suggestions. My 2 things for Lakota changes, apart from economy aside, is that the bow riders need to have an increased multiplier versus villagers.
Yes.
The 0.75 is a tasteful number that gives a nod to saying the Lakota are a raiding civ, and they are specialists at that. 0.5 just removes the identity, and actually, the whole point of Lakota is you need to raid your opponent to get into the game to get that economy. If they can't do that, it's really awkward for that bow rider, and you don't actually see many bow riders in H2 these days. And the Dog Soldier big button needs to go back to 1500 because for 2,000 food, it's just not worth it any time before like 24 minutes. By then, it just has no impact to the game. There's nothing sadder than just having to call a Dog Soldier big button so late in the game but has no effect. But there was so many clutch fights where both armies double down and you think the coach is down out, and then they call the 6 Dog Soldier big button for 1,500 food. You're like, oh my god, what a power spike, what a return. But 2,000 food is just insurmountable most games.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I was very salty with the bow rider nerf. I had a tasty age 2 build where you could get like 20, 30 bow riders at like 7 minutes. Pretty all in,
I know.
but
So the thing is, I know, like, let's say I'm a dev. I'm thinking, oh, German balance changes. I could do this, I could do that. Most of it will be well received. Not too much outcry. Lakota is so sensitive to changes, especially key concepts early in the game, that let's say you gave them an extra food crate in H1. Well, they get to age up fast and send 4 Axe Riders into your base straight away. Or maybe turn down the 4 Axe Riders to be 3 Axe Riders, so they have 2 3 Axe Rider cards in H2. Oh, well, that's not a good card then, because most of the units food anyway. And it's these little sensitive changes is just so hard to manage with Dakota.
I agree. All right. Inca. I don't know if there have been more games than Inca where I've just wanted to throw my keyboard out the window. Particularly with the BS card that I forget what it's called, that increases the building HP by like a bajillion, and you're just sitting there and it's shooting your falconets down. And you're like,
I'll let Lion take this one because he loves that.
Yeah,
Don't you, Lion?
Yeah, that is quite tilting, I must say. I do think though now that they've had.
But why do Inca have this card in H2 and all the other Civs have the card in H4? It's so broken. Lion, you do know that all the other Civs used to have that card in H1 until it got moved to H4. And this is probably a bit of an oversight. No, but it's so gay that they've left it there. Oh my god, I've got to move it. It's so broken.
It's H3 now, so I'm happy with that.
Yeah.
Oh my god, it's H3. It needs to be H5.
It was fundamentally broken. And I can explain for hours why, but
yeah.
It would be here all day.
Right.
Be here all day.
I do think now that they have 90 villagers instead of 99, buff Chicha Brewing back to the old 1.0 food, I think, would be fair. I don't know if you guys think that's too much or if there's a happy medium somewhere, but I think...
I've always thought catchers were like around 0.9 something food. They were 0.6 and like a 1.5 buff on the Chincha Brewing card.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
You just gotta be careful with eco houses. It's you don't want that to be like super impact on the economy. You want it to be a nice helping assistance, but as soon as that dominates, then it gets into a really awkward territory when a bit of walling, a bit of catcher house booming, a bit of this, and a bit of endless production gets really crazy. And although I've never played a game of Inca, I don't want to. I kind of think that Inca, like, in a somewhat of a sweet spot. Yes, the Chimmy runners are annoying and lame, but it is one of the good things about the Civ, and they have weaknesses here and there. Out of the points,
it used to be a lot worse.
Yeah, at the points you mentioned there, the only thing I'd probably agree with is the Chincharaths. They probably have always been too strong and still retain their strength. Yeah. But that's about it, really.
I agree. Inca are pretty damn good at the moment. They do have weaknesses which you can exploit, but people tend not to. I mean, like Inca, you can rush Inca. They are the standard meta with them at the moment is as soon as you age up, you ship something like 5 vills or 700 wood, and then the card after that is the 2 war huts. And so, but before that point, people aren't really realistically making any units other than the the TC big button, which is the pikes, to try and deter any Russians. So they have weaknesses that can be exploited. They can get, Botto FF'd as well at the same time. Chimus used to be really, really annoying. They're less annoying, but still annoying now because they got the snare nerf, which they can only not be snared now after their big button. So yeah, Inca are sitting in a really good spot. They're a really good Civ. Like Harrison said, the only things I would also agree with is potentially nerfing the Chincharas, because they have, from day one, they've always been too OP. The main reason they've always been too OP is because they fire forward. Unlike other boats that have to turn to the side, Chincharas they have small hitboxes as well. So it means that the boats hitboxes, and they just micro so much more efficiently than European boats and European war boats. So that's the main reason why they're too good.
Even more oppressive is their ability to melt land armies. Just more damage output than a frigate could dream.
That's why I was thinking the range,
the
maybe.
area. It's
And that's actually fascinating that you bring that up. I didn't even consider the forward shooting.
I love Lionheart, but there's one time I wished death upon himself and family when he was playing Inca and camped the coast of a stronghold and Chincha rafts. I was like, my Lion, what is up? Why?
Yeah,
please.
Yeah, I like my toxic play.
That was new level.
All right. Now,
excellent.
As a self-proclaimed Chinaman, right? I do believe the Blockhouse. Now, granted, we've all seen the Minimalt meta shift. I do think the Blockhouse should cost 300 export, though. It's a bit, especially at my level, right? You ship the Blockhouse, and what is anyone going to do about that? Like, get fucked, and you age up, and then you have your massive amount of shipments that you're just sending, and just you pound it home at that point.
I agree that the Blockhouse is very strong. I think that, although it's a simple way to change it, is fundamentally the wrong way. You've got to compare the Blockhouse to the Japan military wagon from the Japanese consulate, only costing 100 export for either a barracks, stable, type of thing. So having the 300 export on that would be super, super expensive. And, that is later in the game. You don't have your 6 musks later on. And, 300 export means that you could just get rushed and you just won't have time to get the Blockhouse in, even if you have export trickle and send tea leaves first. Like, people have sent tea leaves first now just to get the export in to send the Blockhouse. It's being nerfed and nerfed and nerfed. What actually probably needs to happen is tea leaves to be nerfed, but then French consulate to be buffed, German consulate to be buffed, so that you don't feel that strategy has been nerfed if you're going into French or German consulate, but you do feel that if you're going into Russia. But at the end of the day, a Blockhouse is only 200 wood for Russia, or 250 wood, one of the two. It's not 250, so you can't really, and 300 export for French consulate is 500 wood crates. So there has to be a line where you draw it somewhere.
That's fair. Yeah.
It's just that it has great synergy. The fact that it's a outpost, it's a barracks, and it's 5 population slot. All of them are crucial for the China FF to really work.
Yeah, I mean, China are one of the best civs in the game at the moment.
Yeah.
They have been throughout the entirety of DE. They are consistently at potentially at the bottom end, but they're still in S tier, and they always have been. I mean, the Blockhouse for 300 export is probably too harsh. I'm not against nerfing China, somewhat, but it seems like every time they do get nerfed, and they consistently do get nerfed, but they still every time seem to be still too good. So, I think they're not OP necessarily, but they're slightly too good. So I think the way that you deal with China is, again, just maybe like taking one unit off their age 3 shipments, one extra skirm off or one extra pike off, and I think that's the way.
Yeah, so there was discussion where some people were like saying, oh, maybe we can reduce the XP shipments, or XP, or give them an XP penalty for their shipments, and that would have a materialistic effect throughout the entire Chinese gameplay. And you're thinking, that is kind of it would be the simple way to buff it, or nerf it, but also fundamentally the wrong way to do it. And so these small changes to all these cards are kind of needed, but it's trying to still like not punish Stage 2 and going longer shipments then, or not punishing treaty booms and having all your cards delayed. It's having to nerf actual individual shipments makes sense as well. Maybe units. I see there's a few unit ideas here, which, to be fair, I don't know. Nothing stands out there as a great. And actually, I'd see if you got the reduced German constant reduction from 15 to 10. Are you saying German constant needs to be buffed or nerfed?
I think it should be nerfed.
Nerfed.
I mean, it's you don't significantly feel it. I would say in Age 2, I like to do a lot of Age 2 China gameplay into Age 3, like a semi or extended Age 2, and it does help a lot. I do think though that in later game you really don't feel it, honestly. But I don't know.
Yeah, I mean the thing to know. I mean, China have got a really good Age 2. They've got a really good Age 3. They've got a really good Age 4. The way that what we really need to be talking about nerf wise is the Harrison will remind me because I can never remember. Is it the Temple of Heaven or the
Temple of Heaven? Yeah, healing.
The Temple of Heaven, the healing. That's a very new meta that was discovered by Minimolt, one of another top 10 player, and that is just unbelievably too OP. You can have an army of max pop, and they could all be half HP or something, and you could heal them to full, and you just completely rickroll the game after that. And so that's definitely something that needs to be nerfed. Outside of that, maybe the monk HP, because monks are probably too good. But outside of that,
let the China hate flow through you.
No, because I like China. Yeah. It's a civ I've always liked, but I've never been particularly good.
So the other thing with the Temple Heaven, it's worth noting, was that it used to be always given villagers, and then it caused massive issues with treaty. In the sense, the Age 5 wonder gave 20 villagers, so China was sat there in treaty games of 120 vills, and all the other age ups have now been changed. So in Age 3 you get a town centre wagon, Age 4 you get 3 rice paddy wagons. I think there's a massive export bonus on the 5th age one, but it's kind of, if you're playing a 1v1 supremacy game, you don't want to age to the 3rd age with the Temple of Heaven. You do not want a town centre rickshaw and this healing wonder, because there's just no momentum at that point of the game. There's no 800 food crates, there's no 8-vil factory, there's no auto production summer palace, there's no skirmisher age up and heavy cannon production. It's just a town centre which you need to build somewhere, and if it start training, it's just kind of awkward. So the whole Temple of Heaven Age 2 is really strong, and 3 vills as an age up wonder with a god power is pretty good. And I'd actually argue the case, but it's the 3 vills really is a bit strong at the moment, and
that's what I think the biggest thing is the 3 vills, because I've been doing the 2 village start and then that, so then you just have like 6 vills coming out, and you're training vills in transition, so it's just very, like, it feels really good. Like, your economy feels great going into Age 2, and if you're getting raided too, or your explorer's about to die and you need, like, you're waiting to pop out disciples, just boom, insta healed, and you're fighting another 500 HP explorer with some disciples running around, and then you're in Age 3. And at that point, like, what do you do if you're there?
The other thing I would say is that I don't know the coding behind the Temple of Heaven. It might be something simple. It might be heal each unit plus how many HP, or heal to percentage over time. I don't know how it is coded, but I think that one of the simplest ways to change it is to change the cooldown time, because quite often you see players calling Age 2 on situations you're thinking, yeah, you've kind of not really got good value there. That was a really wasted, or you've gone too keen, and then you realise it doesn't actually matter because it's there ready to go for the next fight, and you're not punished for making misplay. And if you are seeing players going Temple of Heaven, they are a bit weak to Age 2 rushes. They might need to call it to hold on, and then that should be punished, as in they don't have access to that later on. The Indian Inspiration, I think, has an insanely long cooldown. And
yes,
rightly so, because that's a strong wonder ability.
All right. I think we could talk about China for decades, but I think that's pretty pretty good coverage. Japan. Um, Honestly, the first one, I think I just put it in there because I didn't have a lot of points for them, so we can ignore that. Um, Honestly, ignore the second one too. But I think the biggest thing is the Explorer Spoke Bomb and the Yumi Archer damage. Um, I think the Yumi Archers are just kind of cancer to deal with. Like they just build like two walls, and you're just getting destroyed by Yumis, and you just have to back off. Um, the Explorer Smoke Bomb, I do like that they reduced it to only one of the explorers can use it, but I feel like it punishes Japan if their explorers are like walking around the map and you're able to snag one of them, which is huge, right? What do you guys think about those 2 points?
It used to be that you could not punish Japan poor scouts in H1. It's just impossible.
Impossible.
You think you had them, and then it just doesn't matter. They can just both get out of the situation at the same time, and that was for me one of the most annoying things is that there's no way to really get an advantage H1 saying I've played this H1 really well. I noticed the H1 or the XP trickle from shrines. I recently saw Maito send that in the game, and it was like best part of 0.75 XP per second on a shrine with 4 animals. If you got full shrine pop, that's 15 trading posts of XP income. That just seemed a little insane when I saw that card come in. So
yeah, I didn't know the rate on it. But I sent it and it felt okay. It felt good at times for sure. I was getting a lot of shipments, but just wanted to bring that up as a topic of point for discussion.
At the moment, I mean, Japan's probably been the best it's ever been in the sense of most average, nothing too out the blue, nothing too oppressive. I think Nagi HP could go back to 25% card, but Nagi's with 30% range resist, high HP, incredible units. The Clubman having range resist from the Japanese consulate, tied with the Japan consulate boost, also incredibly strong. The fact that the Ashi and Yumi upgrades are separate means that you're not having this like insane infantry attack, and you go, wow, all my Japan army is just now insanely strong. It's at the moment, there's nothing I can really say that Japan is actually overbroken. I can understand at our ELO level or the lower ELO level that they are still strong, but I mean, for example, your 600 coin crates, well, the whole identity is having these crates twice, and that actually, the fact that they have the coin crates twice means that they could go coin H2 to make Nagi Natters and then have coin to age and save space in their deck for extra upgrade cards and extra units, and really kind of think if the game goes on, Japan's going to scale because they have the capacity to go for it. So there's always little intricate details, but actually Japan, they are solid B tier at the moment. They're not A tier. And if anything, we'll be looking for buffs, not nerfs.
Fair enough. Any comments from our sexy lion?
He doesn't play Japan.
I'm no Japan expert. However, I play against them a lot, and they suffer from the same problems that Sweden do. And when playing against them, they have building eco. That's their eco, isn't it? The building trickles and whatnot, the house trickles. So you have to play a certain way against Japan, and Japan are very exploitable. Like you can exploit their weaknesses, and but at lower elos, it's much harder to punish them. It's much harder to punish those, to exploit those weaknesses. It's the same with Sweden, and that's why we see both Sweden and Japan do very well at lower elo levels, but at higher elo levels, they actually have sort of negative, win rates because. Or less than 50% win rates because
negative win rates. Come on,
we're negative. Less than 50% is what I mean. And because people at that elo level, one, know how to exploit those civilizations, and two, know how to. They have the micro capability of doing so.
Yeah, and I think just pikes and rushing, and you're pretty much chilling against Japan.
Yeah, I mean, of course, but there's it's not just about dumb rushing. You've got to do it in a certain way, and you've got to know how to contain them, and
Yeah.
yeah. So yeah.
All right.
But again, I think Japan are sitting at sort of like Aaron said, top of B tier, very bottom of A tier, maybe. But they're we should be looking. We don't want to be nerfing Japan any harder.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. India, holy fuck. Every time I queue up and I just see India, 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 and I'm just shed
India
tears.
at the moment.
I shed tears. So the Ottoman consulate, what the fuck is that shit? Who thought that giving them the ability for eco, military, and line of sight was a good idea?
It's always been known, but the Ottoman consulate is just insane for India, and there's multiple things which led to this. From India's point of view, the French consulate has been hugely nerfed, absolutely just decimated. You can't go H2 in French consulate and send coin crates to age up. You've only got food and wood. By that point, you're not spending your export on food because it's just too late to get any use of it. You're not going to send an H2 because it's just not the value. The wood is the same, but you can't go good faith agreements. French consulate out of the equation. Brits is Brits, that's fine. But the Ottoman is, again, it was all fine until for the Ottomans, they buffed the Minutemen needlessly, and then everybody complained that actually India got buffed by these Minutemen buff because you just could not have pushed them in H2. Most of the times in H2, you don't have Skirm Goon, you have Musketeer and Hussars, and those Minutemen will just decimate heavy infantry armies in H2 to the point that it's just impossible. So they thought, panic, change that to be ASAPs. Okay, that'll be fine. And then what happens is, well, you've actually got a really versatile unit, auto techs, and they don't decay in HP. So if you do get the export for them, well, there's no reason to not. It's actually really good value to get them, and they're again too buffed, and you can't put a price on the line of sight. Like that is one of the biggest bonuses there. But Ottoman consulate, it's just like the AOE3 is like open secret. Like it's just too strong. But will they change it? Because you can't. For example, the Ottoman Cav, you can't say, we're going to give them 2 Cav instead of 3 Cav for the Ottoman Cav button, but 3 Ottoman Hussars at the moment, the Delhis, are just better than 3 consulate regular Hussars. It's just better value. So you could increase the price on quite a lot of these things a bit to curve that, but that's only one issue of India. I'm sure Lion would love to talk to you about the sexy Rajputs and how they're a bit too nasty.
If you look at the bottom of my screen, the speed of 5.5 and the attack of 1.2, I think.
So yeah, they attack at 1.25. I think it's 1.2 is maybe Shotels or something around that area. But it's the Rajput speed is fine. It's just the high base attack and the high rate of fire makes them a little bit too good. Maybe having Rajput speed of 5 is one thing, but the whole idea was there are people sat there going, we don't see Rajputs being played. All we see is Sepoy, Gurkha, and other stuff. I want to see Rajputs, and they've kept on buffing a good unit already to being a must use. And the Rajput Mahout Lancer composition together is so interesting because they decimate Skirm Goon. Absolutely rinses them. It's one of those. The whole matchup between India and Germany has been switched on its head overnight. It's such a favourable matchup now for India as a result of the Sepoy change, not Sepoy change, the Rajput change. Well, I mean, and Sepoy changed. And I noticed you say bring back the Cav multipliers, but I they need to find a middle ground because at the moment they are just again a bit too weak in melee, and now the Sepoys are like a poor man's version of the Janissary.
Yeah, India are like it's almost like where do you begin? Like they are perhaps the most versatile Civ. Like there is no age or no unit that they cannot make. Since age 2, they have pretty much every type of unit. They have Cav, they have Goons, they have Musketeers, they have Skirmishers, they have basically like the best. Rajputs are basically like an OP Rodolero at the moment. There is nothing that they can't do, and there is no normally a civilization that gets that sort of level of flexibility, there should be drawbacks, but the problem is that there is no drawbacks. They get an extra shipment, an extra villager with every shipment. They have. It's just like my head hurts when I think about India. They scale insanely well. They have agri-forts to defend. They have Ottoman consulate, which again is insane for eco. It's insane for defensive capabilities. Like Harrison said, it gives you the really good cav. So they can. It's just there's just so much I think wrong with India, and they are just so good for so many different reasons. Which is why minus Italy, they are currently the best civ in the game. And there's really not many civs that counter them hard. You have to outplay them, but Rajputs need to be nerfed, like we've discussed. I think consulate. The amount of things consulate costs, like the cav and the villagers, they should all be slightly increased.
I think in general, it's consulate across all the Asian civs at the moment is overperforming.
They remind me of you're right, Harrison, and they remind me, particularly India, they remind me of the Africa civs at the moment, where their version of export influence is just it can just be so overpowering and overwhelming. And don't forget, it's essentially a free resource. It's a free extra resource which can be used to make units. So you've got to be careful about how OP that extra resource is, because European civs don't get it. I understand European civs get other things, but I just think that India are just way too good. They're so unbelievably versatile. They scale way too well. Like they could not have the +1 villager with every card, and they would still be a good civ. They would still be a competitive civ.
Yeah, and that's why I wanted to have XP nerf in the middle there for their shipments, because it's impressive.
Well, they are already nerfed, so it's...
Yeah, I mean, if you do the Carney build, you can either get your consulate, you can get, since you're chopping so much wood, you can get a TP. I know it might be a bit overkill, but the Civ itself is overperforming, I think, at all levels, and it's just really easy.
I wouldn't suggest an XP change, because there's other things you can change ahead of it, and I don't think the villager per shipment is what's really defining India, and I don't think it's the late game. I think some of the Indian cards are also very strong, but I don't think the XP element is where we're playing. I know that the XP income from livestock isn't actually that large, but if you do Sacred Pen, then it is exceptionally noticeable then. But it has to be Ottoman consulates, has to be Rajputs, has to be maybe that's about it, really. I think Gurkhas and Sepoys are fine at the moment. Has elephants been stealthily nerfed to the point where they're too good? Maybe not. I don't actually know. But
sometimes I feel like sometimes the pathing in general, improving them, which I'm all for pathing improvements. But I've noticed a lot of players at my level will be including the elephant armor buffs or elephant combat, right? And I think that kind of pushes them over the edge in some cases. For example,
tastefully strong, I would say. They are countable. They can get easily focused with micro.
Right. But, when you go full Gurkha, Howda, or Sepoy Mahal, and it's just yes, they are killable. It's just they eat so much, and I understand they have to be tanky for the amount of population they consume. It's just annoying, honestly.
It just shows where India is at the moment. That Lion hasn't even mentioned siege elephants, which is his favorite unit in the game.
They are really strong.
Well, I could talk about their not only have we discussed so many elements that make them really, really good, they have game-changing shipments, particularly in Age 3. They have Mahouts, they have Urumi, they have the best shipment in the game, which is the siege elephants. They have an answer to absolutely everything, and it's just you never know what they're going to pop under an Agrafor or a TT, which could change the game. Yeah. And it's like they have multiple Spahi shipments, because Spahi shipments are essentially the same thing, as Urumi, for example. They're game-changing shipments, and they're too good. They are way too good for their costs. And
well, that's literally the point. Is that you have in any. It's just known in the game that any shipment which has a cost gives more back because it has the cost to justify. That's why mercenary shipments cost 1,000 resources. But it's the fact that it's the amount of power spike you get at that moment due to the cost. Now, 500 food for the Yurumi shipment isn't a lot, but the tempo swing you get from it is huge, and it's the there's been a trend. There's been a trend, you know. We joke about the AOE3 German battleship card, but the point is that there's a price at which for every shipment in the game will not be worth it if the price is too expensive or if there is a price. I would love. I mean, I wouldn't say no if Dutch had a 14 skirmisher card in AOE3 for the cost of 500 gold. But like, yeah, sure. Here's my money. Take it. Give me a 14 skirmish shipment. And then if that came into the game, everyone would be like, that's just nuts. That's just wrong. But then India with these food shipments, like 5-6 food different shipments in AOE3, AOE4, it's been accepted, and it's just a really. I don't like it because it's forcing new civs as well to kind of go down you can pay this to get this massive income of shipments, and obviously we'll probably come on to the Africans with the influence shipments because they are, you know, again another case of big spikes.
Yeah,